It's time for something a little bit different. Today marks the start of yet another new series, I guess you could say, which I'm going to call Deck Feature. Now, since I am a student, I cannot afford all decks in the game, so there are times when people ask me to talk about some decks that are fairly popular, people want to know more about, but I simply don't play them, so I can't do a deck profile to explain everything. But I decided that I would make a little series where I talk about decks that, okay, I don't have them, but I do have some knowledge about them. So I would basically just tell you the key cards of the deck to basically give you a start if you want to build the deck yourself. So today's feature is going to be on Blade Wings, which have become somewhat popular post GBT07 and possibly with a new support in GBT08 that could be even better. Now the key card for Blade Wings is obviously Sullivan. This card is what makes the deck a tank and allows you to stall until you can get the perfect kill turn with Gilles de Rais. So we're going to talk about that strat a bit later, but first we need to discuss Sullivan because this is by far the most important card of the Bladewing deck, and when you ride your Grade 3 you must ride him because it's basically like how No Seal really has to ride the Grade 3 No Seal. It's the same story with him. So his first skill is by far the most important one, which is the one that carries the whole game. If you have 15 or more soul, he gets the skill that all your guardians get plus 10k, and the other skill that at the end of battle that he was attacked, you have to soul blast too. So what this means is that when you're 15 soul, if you guard with let's say a 5k, it's going to be a 15k. But you're going to have to soul blast too, so you're going to go down to 13 soul and therefore you won't be able to use it again. So it's better to stay at like 17, 19, 21 soul, so like if you're at 21 you'll be able to use his skill 4 times and you know, and so on. Therefore it's very important, and the fact that he soul blast 2 is actually very good because you know how with Dog Regulars you often soul charge, oh look, there go all my critical triggers, my heal triggers, my perfect guards. That's not so much a problem anymore because now with the Soul Blast 2, you can Soul Blast those crits, those stride fodders, those perfect guards, and just shuffle them back with a card that we're going to be taking a look at next. But first we also need to talk about his second skill, which does have a lot of synergy with some of the other cards that we run in this deck. So when you ride him, you choose one in rear guards and look for up to 3 cards with the same name, put them in your soul and shuffle your deck. So I'm gonna show you 2 cards pretty soon which interact with this perfectly, and they are your main targets with this effect. So now let's take a look at the Blade Wing stride. This stride is T-Bold. So when you stride him, if your heart is a Blade Wing, you return your entire dropstone to your deck, shuffle your deck, and if the number of cards in your soul is 15 or more, then your front row rear guards get plus 10k. But if it's not 15 or more, so even if it's 14, you soul charge 5. This is really good because you can, you know, kind of get up to 10 soul by your first stride and then just stride into him and get your 15, or even if you're at 14 you get up to 19 and then you can use Sullivan's skill 3 times next turn. So this is a super good stride, which is the synergy that I mentioned. So when you soul blast your criticals with Sullivan, you can shuffle them back with T-Bold, and this is really good. He's definitely a 4-of. This card is mad. Like, also buffing up your front row by 10k is also not something to laugh at. So I would definitely say that this is by far one of the MVP strides throughout the entire game. Now the 2 cards that interact with Sullivan's on-right skill are first off Dimension Creeper and Bladewing Sykes. So Sykes does have another effect, but the effect that they both share is that you can, when they're in the soul, you can soul blast them to soul charge 2. So if you target Dimension Creeper on your rear guard, and then you search for 3, you can soul blast all 3 to soul charge 6. So these 2 cards help you reach 15 soul by your first stride a lot, and it's definitely rather easy to reach 15 soul by your first stride, especially with the help of T-Bold. And obviously Sykes on call soul charge 1 effect does help that as well, so generally they're both very, very good cards. Now when it comes to alternate grade 3s, you can take 2 paths. I'm going to mention that the optimal amount of grade 3s for the Bladewing deck for now is around 6, but if you want to play safe you can go up to 8, but like I said earlier, Sullivan is your main ride target. You do not want to ride anything else unless you're kind of going for game on that turn. So the first of the alternate grade 3s that comes in a pair is the Ragey pair. So First off, we have the old Reiji, which the skill isn't that important. His first skill is if you have 15 or more soul, he gets 2 extra criticals, and his other skill is when you ride him, you basically do the same thing as Sullivan. So he's not that important. The most important fact is to have him in the soul. That's all that really matters with him. And now the brand new Reiji, which is Wing of Recurrence Bladewing Reiji, is the kind of the kill turn, you could say, but he does get hit by perfect guards in case they have one. So his first effect is when he attacks, if you have the old Reiji in your soul, you can Soul Blast 15, and if you do, he gets plus 15k and plus 2 criticals. So swinging for 26 and extra 2 criticals is not something to laugh at, but perfect guards can't stop that pretty easily. So it's really important to time this well, and I would recommend playing one of the old Reijis, one of the new Reijis as your alternate grade 3s to Sullivan, because you're not going to be using them that often and they might only come in handy once. His other effect is in the soul. At the end of battle that your Bladewing grade 3 attacked, and it's not this grade 3, like not this Bladewing Reiji, when it attacks you can cast 1 and discard 3 cards from your hand if the attack didn't hit, and then you can ride Bladewing Reiji, this new Bladewing Reiji from your soul as stand, so basically you get an extra attack in. So this obviously also works with Sullivan, so if your Sullivan doesn't hit, you can ride the Bladewing Reiji. Sadly, it's grade 3s only, so you cannot do this after a T-Bold attack gets perfect guard or something. So that if it's not such a good card simply because of that. If it could have worked with a stride, I feel that it could have been better, but oh well. Now the other grade 3 that you can play is Sharat Vampire. He's not that good because his GB2 is basically a plus 10k plus 1 crit if you've got 10... The plus 10k is if you have 6 or more soul, as the plus 1 crit is if you have 10 or more soul. Again, this can run into perfect guards. His second skill is a bit more important. When you stride, you can counterblast 1 if you do your soul charge 2, and he gets the skill that when he attacks a Vanguard, if you got 6 or more soul, your opponent has to choose a rearguard and retire it. Now, why this is good is when you would stride Gilles to end the turn. And first, let's take a look at Gilles' skill, just in case people don't know. So Gilles' skill is an act, you flip a Gilles face up, and then if you're in GB2, he gets plus 10k if you have 10 or more soul. And then if you have 15 or more soul, he basically gets the glory effect. And if you have 2 or more G units face up, then he gets an extra critical. So that's the GB2 part. He's basically the kill turn. You go into him to end the game. Now, what you can do when you want to end the game is you ride into Char, and you would go into Gilles, and Gilles does have his own special critical, which is One-Eyed Succubus, so you can call those, and then when the Gilles attacks, you put 2 of them, let's say, in the soul, and you get an extra 10k with a glory effect, meaning that it's going to be a lot harder for your opponent to guard. And now, if that wasn't enough, let's talk about one of the MVPs of the deck, which is Enigmatic Assassin. You do not run this card as a starter. I'm just going to say this. You run the old GBT03 starter instead, unless something new comes in GBT08, but you run 1 or 2 copies in your main deck of this, optimally 2, and throughout the game you're going to soul charge it. Like, you soul charge so much, you're definitely going to get it. So if you don't know Enigmatic Assassin's effect, at the beginning of your attack step, if you have 10 or more soul, you can call it to rearguard circle from your soul. If you do, it gets plus 5k, and if you have 15 or more soul, it gets another 10k. So it's a 20k booster. You call this behind Gilles, you're already swinging for 56. You get some of those critical triggers in there, you swing for 66. This makes it very hard to block. Now, there's another grade 2 that also works pretty well with Enigmatic Assassin, which is Doppelvampire. So he's basically the Silent Tom of the deck. On GB1, and when you have Darkness active, when he attacks the Vanguard, if you have 6 or more soul, he gets plus 5k, and if you have 15 or more soul, your opponent can call grade 0. So even putting 1 critical on him will bait out G-Guardians, Perfect Guards, which is really good because people are obviously afraid of that kind of thing, because it's a guard restricting rearguard that will probably have a critical they stacked on him. So very threatening card, and with Enigmatic Assassin, it's really good. Looking at the future, there's also the new grade 3 Gland's End Vampire, I believe, and the new Sharat Stride that puts back your cards on the field to your soul. So you can actually, with the new grade 3, you can reuse Enigmatic Assassin every single turn, which is very, very threatening. Now, the final grade 2, because we've kind of discussed all the others, is Librarian. She's really good for consistency because she gives you counter charge, draw, soul charge, basically everything you want. So Librarian is definitely a good grade 2 for now. There aren't that many other cards that you could play for now because that's basically the best grade 2 lineup you can get. So Doppel, Librarian, and Sykes. Now, Doreen has always been a good card ever since she's been released back in BTO3, and she can still easily become a threat because, you know, when you're soul charging 5 with a T-Bolt, she gets a lot of power, and generally she can easily become a threat. And now, draw triggers often aren't that great, but Hysteric Shirley has a really good point to her because with Sullivan's skill, she's a 15k shield, which, you know, against, you know, 21k columns, that's perfect. And she provides an on-demand soul charge too, because her effect puts her into the soul, so that's already soul charge 1, and then by her effect, you get another soul. So it's an on-demand soul charge 2, which can be very good, because if you're on 15 soul, you use a Hysteric Shirley to get up to 17, and so on. Now, the final card that I'm kind of going to mention is the Quintet Wall. The Quintet Wall can be pretty good because with Sullivan's effect, it can guard for huge amounts, and I mean like huge, like 80k, 90k, that kind of thing. One final Sullivan interaction is with the G-Guardians. So, as you already know, Sullivan adds 10k shield to all Guardians, and this includes G-Guardians. So, first off we have Agrat Bat Makhlat. I love saying that one. When, it's gonna go over a skill when you guard with her, Soul Charge 2, and if you have 6 or more souls, she gets plus 5k shield. So she doesn't just guard for 20k, she guards for 30k with Sullivan, and because she gives 2 soul charges, that basically makes Sullivan's Soul Blast 2 like balanced out. So you Soul Blast 2, Soul Charge 2, so it's basically the same, so you don't actually lose out on anything. Very good G-Guardian because, you know, guarding for 30k is nothing to laugh at. And then we have the other one, which is Nighttime Gentleman Saint Germain. When you guard with him, if you have 10 or more soul, he gets plus 10k shield, and if you have 15 or more soul, then you can give as many of your units as you want resist. So he doesn't just guard for 25, but 35, but sadly doesn't give the soul charge. Therefore, I would say Agrat Bat Makhlat, God, I love saying that, is actually a better one because she provides almost the same amount of shield and she also gives you a soul charge. And those are pretty much all the important units that you would want to play. So I've kind of tried to explain each of the units and why you would play them because I feel like this deck is generally very good, and the biggest weakness of it is against multi-attack decks like Aqua Force and Nova Grappler because they force out a lot of soul on very small attacks because Sullivan's skill activates after every single attack where he's attacked, even if you don't guard it. So the fact that they can kind of abuse that with like Aqua Force, for example, does hurt a lot. But with a new Sharot Stride, you're going to be able to counter those Aqua Force matchups pretty easily because they just basically wipe out their field, which is really, really nice. The build could change in GBTO8 because, you know, obviously there's going to be stuff like the new Sharot Stride that's going to be included and the new Grade 3, but we'll see what else comes for Dark Regulars in the next set, which could change this build. But for now, I would say that this is the best Dark Regulars deck, and it's very, very consistent and just generally very strong. So make sure you always ride Sullivan. That's why I recommend 6 Grade 3s, and that's pretty much all I can say. So, I hope if you're interested in Blade Wings, this did help you out in starting out and actually building them. Don't forget to play Stride Fodders because those are pretty important because you stride in this deck pretty often. That's like the one great one that I didn't mention. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.